Hi, everybody. Okay, so let's check to see if everything is working. Um, wow, it's been a long day. We are burning the midnight oil and we don't have time to sleep. There's no time to sleep in this because there is so much going on. You just wouldn't even believe it. Um, so let's look at everything. Okay. I don't know if we're on yet. There it is. Okay. So today is 1,776 days since Richard was brutally taken. It's 1,775. Okay, 1,775 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room and his life was taken because he was a whistleblower and he was a witness for the cases that President Trump's administration was looking into, was investigating there. Richard was reporting on the criminal trafficking along the El Paso borderland. And of course, it had infiltrated into the military. And I've really have gotten this understanding from, years and years that the American public don't understand uh, the problems that are in our military, that the crimes that are done by our military. And, we support our military 100% overall. And we show it because we give them right now, it's $1 trillion funding for our military. So we absolutely support them. I know that after the Vietnam War, it was a little bit crazy there, but we have absolutely supported our military. And of course, being, our family having, our immediate family really having like 80 years of combined service, really shows you how much that we support our military because we are a veterans family. Richard joining with the best intentions. He was a distinguished honor graduate for his cycle in basic training and his cycle in AIT. He was number one in both. He was the fastest runner in his unit. He was the guidon bearer. He absolutely put his all into it. He was promoted 3 times with waivers before his peers. Very quickly, he was promoted 3 times. And so, you know, um, combat lifesaver. Um, and in that short time, 3 AAMs, 3 Army um, achievement medals, 3 Army achievement medals. Very quickly, we were very proud. He received a $500 award for being number one. Um, so he was absolutely a stellar soldier. And he wanted to be CID. He wanted to be an agent. He wanted to fight crime. And he went to Fort Bliss. He went to El Paso. And this is, El Paso is an ancient city. I was born at White Sands. My dad was ADA. I would jog all over Fort Bliss. We lived on Fort Bliss. I was confirmed in the old replica chapel. That's where I was confirmed. I would swim in the replica pool, the Olympic size pool. Went out to the desert to get a lot of sand and sandbags to bring back to have little backyard pool. Those were the days, right? Went horseback riding in the Girl Scouts all the time. There, went over to Juarez all the time. Um, went up to Cloudcroft to camp. Um, just through the summer on the weekends. That's where we went. We went up to Cloudcroft to hike and camp and enjoy the little bit cooler weather up there. So we know the area. El Paso is an ancient city. And my dad, the reason why I just shared all that, because I wanted to tell you what my dad told me that he knew. He knew that there were tunnels everywhere. And so, El Paso is just being on the border. Um, Richard wanted to go there to be law enforcement, to learn how to be MP or be CID. And so he, and even Soto, dirty agent Soto, um, he confirmed that Richard had applied for direction on how to become CID. And so he couldn't deny that. He couldn't deny that. Um, and Richard became a whistleblower, though, instead. He became a whistleblower, and he told us it was really, really bad. It was so bad. It was so bad that he didn't even want to make the Army a career anymore, like he had hoped to do. He didn't want it. He wanted to get out. It was so bad. And so we know that there were hundreds of thousands of children trafficked through Fort Bliss. We know that there were weapons trafficking and lots of ammunition trafficking, a lot of equipment and everything like that. They just arrested a few months back attempted trafficking through these storage units, the tactical move storage units. The military has everything. They have the trucks, they have the tactical move storage units, they can fill it up, and they have the fuel. And Delta Battery 143 has the fuel. They had the fuel. So, of course, that would be an important unit to belong to. And this is all confirmed um, that the military was up to no good on Fort Bliss. And we know that because Afghanistan even showed it, that Milley was even taking part in it. Look at how much equipment he left in Afghanistan, how much technology he left in Afghanistan. For example, he left the night vision goggles that the rest of the world didn't have. They didn't have the technology of the night vision goggles. That was Americana. That was the U.S. Army. And General Milley, a four-star general, Joint Chiefs of Staff, he left that behind. He couldn't even get those on the planes, and to protect national security by protecting our technology that made us have an advantage, especially in night battles. It allowed us to have advantage. And who did I learn this from? I learned it from Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Ted Cruz reported on this when Milley was in the congressionals. So it shows you, why couldn't he bring that back? Why was the departure out of Afghanistan so criminal, right? It was so criminal because it was a bunch of lies. We can't bring this stuff back. I mean, Humvees and helicopters and everything. I'm just using, for one, the night vision goggles, because that was such an advantage we had over everybody else. And Milley just gave it away. Did he sell it? Because he didn't bring anything back. Right? He didn't bring anything back. And I've been on those C4 planes. I've been on those planes many of times, Space A. When you are a family member, especially during war, and I'm talking about Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Um, During those times, I was on Space A quite a bit. Um, Going back to the States while Rob, he was deployed for 18 months, 18 months. So, um, and then he came back and he was deployed. When you're a physician assistant, you're deployed quite a bit. You're deployed a lot. And medics, medics and physician assistants are always being taken from, well, Rob being a physician assistant was taken from his unit and assigned temporarily, deployed to other units that were shorthanded. PAs were very, very new at that time, but they were very important because you could have like 3 or 4 PAs working with one doctor, right? Or with one uh, um, nurse practitioner, right? So, the PAs were just very, very needed, and they were very few and far between. Um, he was one of the first to go through the program, and he was, uh, yeah, that's a whole long history. But the point that I'm trying to make is that there was a lot of trafficking. There was a lot of nonsense going on by even very high ranking military. And of course, Mark Mealy, and he needs to be brought back and he needs to be court martialed. And of course, James McConville, and of course, Michael Garrett, and of course, Clem Coward and Sean Bernabe, and those that are involved in Richard's case. And I list them all the time because we have hard evidence. It's not just me saying it. I'm not, in danger of defaming anyone because the evidence is so hard against them for their really, it's treason. It's being a traitor. It's absolutely being a traitor. The hard evidence is so it's a mother load of hard evidence of these crimes that they've created. And so the trafficking is there. So Richard was a huge problem for the traffickers there in El Paso and Fort Bliss. He was a huge problem for them because he was a witness. He was a witness, and they had to silence a witness. They had to silence, and they silenced him before he could be a witness. He was a whistleblower. And when those investigations would go to trial or whatever, he silenced that. And you see how they manipulated the Walmart mass shooting, which is same people involved in manipulating that case. And um, the evidence is there that it was orchestrated. This is not something that I just picked out of the air. We have presented the evidence. I mean, very clear evidence with audio recordings of Joe Spencer, with the marriage of Michael Mayella's daughter. To Patrick Crucius's brother, the cover up and the trial going on, not even a trial, the case going on and on and on, and no trial, just plea deals, right? And everyone just got all upset because this involves Walmart and suing Walmart. A lot of these victims wanted to sue Walmart, but the evidence is so overwhelming that it's really damning for them now. Let Ernest Christopher Grant try to sue Walmart now, right? But they just thought that they could do this dirty deed, this bloody dirty deed, and make money off of it. That's they're just so brazen. But I think the American people, I think the world is seeing through these false narratives, and these false narratives um, are put out there, propagated, published by the likes of Bob Moore, who, before El Paso Matters, he was with El Paso Times. A matter of fact, El Paso Matters, um, is is leasing office space right now from El Paso Times. So El Paso Times really needs to be more forthright about their conflicts of interest, and so does El Paso Matters. You can just lump those two together, El Paso Matters and El Paso Times together, and they have long history, long relationships with each other. In this media, and Bob Moore. Is known to be a disgraced individual, and spreading false stories using convicted criminals like Leilani Hart to fabricate false stories so that they can tamper with witnesses and tamper or harass and intimidate and even try to destroy reputations, the credibility of a whistleblower or a witness. And, so that is hard evidence that shows that they have been doing that. And, that's really tampering with cases and tampering with a murder case and our son's case and not disclosing that he was a whistleblower when they absolutely knew that he was a whistleblower. Because Bob Moore's wife, her name is Kathleen Gannon. Kathleen Gannon is KTEP, is NPR, is PBS, right? Kathleen Gannon is really at the center of this with Nidal Baem because now we have connected them with Nidal Baem, the FBI, the fraudster FBI man that walked into the Dollar General, um, uh, revealing that Richard is dead, that he had inside knowledge. This is in October. Um, so that he had inside knowledge with the FBI that the FBI had found Richard's remains in Juarez, Mexico, and that he was dead and that they were looking in many different places because the situation was very, very much the same like Guillen, like Vanessa Guillen, who had been dismembered, right? And so this is, um, the connection with Kathleen Gannon and Bob Moore and Nidal Baem has been established, and it's been established with also El Paso ISD. El Paso ISD fraudster, another fraudster, Manuel Chavira, who is an imposter. I think I can call him an imposter because when he got that job, he was impersonating a peace officer, right? But he didn't even have a police officer's license, and that went to court. Nieto, the FBI, who had a very intimate relationship. So we're told, through our connections there with, we have a long history in El Paso. We have friends in El Paso. Um, so and in New Mexico, on that border area. Um, and these that Nieto had a relationship um with Teresa Chavira, which is Manuel Chavira's wife. And so they were scheming to um well, they have, when you have these positions, then you have the means, you can abuse your power so that Manuel Chavira can impersonate a peace officer, right? A peace officer. This is, so terrible. It's so terrible. And Manuel Chavira's son has two children uh, with a very close relative, a very close person with Bob Moore and Kathleen Gannon. Kathleen Gannon's, and this is why this is so important because now you know why we're going to be talking about Raquel. Raquel Primo, Raquel, Adriana Primo. She connects. She has this network, right, with the Chaviras, with Kathleen Gannon, and this connects to the whole Bob Moore group. Um, you know, the whole Bob Moore group, and I don't want to name names. Um, but you know who they are, who has been harassing us, who was threatening us, who was impersonating us so that they could get information, so that they can access files, so that they can access other information. Um, you know, this group from the beginning, and even some in uniform, okay, some in uniform, this group. Um, and some in Richard's unit, right? And I can say some of their names like Danae Katzen and Hema Ruggiero and Michael Ruggiero, and it goes on, right? These people that Amber Chase, that they have connections with, um, and it all ties to uh, really silencing Richard. They wanted to target Richard, and we have it confirmed today that absolutely Manuel Chavira and his group with Bob Moore targeted Richard to silence Richard. Okay, they targeted him to silence him, and so that is confirmed. And that means that the El Paso ISD chief of fraudster chief of police targeted Richard to silence him. And, of course, they had the backing of the media, right? You have the backing of KTEP, you have the backing of El Paso Matters with the connections with El Paso Times. And you even have connections in there with Telemundo and Univision, of course, KTSM. So, this is, and I can go on with some other Mexican, because Arturo Alba, um, and Willie Moya, those are the cartel connections with this. So this is a group. Bob Moore's absolutely connected to the cartel, absolutely connected to Manuel Chavira, absolutely connected to having this law enforcement, Nieto and the FBI, and then going into the intelligence there on Fort Bliss through Nieto, through his wife, Cynthia Hernandez Nieto, and then of course with Nidal Baem and Bradford Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, and he's a lieutenant colonel. And then of course this all hooks with Leilani Hart. It hooks up with the fuel on base. It hooks up with the VA. It all connects with Leilani Hart and Dallas Hart, and of course, the disgraced CID agent Tavita Nusa that had his badge terminated in 2021. He had his badge terminated in 2021. So this is, all of this is very this is from evidence and evidence, a lot of hard work. We have way over 20,000 hours of investigative work just with our immediate family. I can't even imagine all the work that those that have given us tips, that have contacted us, that have not been intimidated by this Bob Moore's group, by the Manuel Chavira group, because they're all one. And because they absolutely know how to intimidate witnesses and make life miserable for people so that they won't want to help, they won't want to share, they won't want anything to do with it, so that they can sweep this murder case like under the rug, and no one would ever know. No one would ever know that they targeted Richard, and they started targeting him in December, of course, January, December 2019, 2020. This is absolutely confirmed. This is from hard evidence of all the FOIAs and all the background checks and all the audios and all the witnesses, all the paperwork. This is, background checks, and employment history, businesses. There's a lot of LLCs involved. A&R Chavira Auto Group is an LLC, which is a big deal. And so that, of course, was being run. A&R is for um, um, the what's Chavira's Alexander Chavira, and of course Raquel. So A&R is for Alexander and Raquel Chavira, and they're all absolutely connected with Manuel Chavira, and of course Bob Moore, Kathleen Gannon. Kathleen Gannon is big. And, so let's talk about why Raquel Primo and of A&R Chavira LLC is so important. Well, it's in the courts right now for deceptive practices. Well, okay, that El Paso Matters, deceptive practices. Bob Moore, deceptive practices. Kathleen Gannon, deceptive practices. KTEP, deceptive practices. El Paso Times, deceptive practices. KTSM, deceptive practices. Manuel Chavira being the fraudster, deceptive practices. Leilani Hart, deceptive practices. I mean, it's just the theme. It's just the theme. They're fraudsters, they're impersonators, they're bullies, they're harassers, and they absolutely targeted Richard, and he lost his life. And, this even, I'm not joking, this even goes into um, exotic dancers. Okay. This even goes into exotic dancers. And of course it does, right? Because we know that Leilani Hart was getting her mail at Dreams Cabaret, where they have exotic dancers. They give it that name, right? Dreams Cabaret, exotic dance. They always give it these names, to create a facade of something good or whatever, when in reality it's just the opposite. Nothing good is coming from it, right? And so uh, this case is even including that, and of course a lot of cross-border activity, the criminal trafficking and cross-border activity, is important to understand how they're getting away with it. What do they need to do? And if they're doing deceptive practices, and Raquel Primo is part of deceptive practices because she's part of A&R Chavira LLC Auto Group, and they were, this is not me. You can go to the courts. They're in the courts right now for Auto Group, that is an LLC that is absolutely involved in deceptive practices. Okay. That's Raquel Primo. We know that Bob Moore is also involved in deceptive practices. We know that Manuel Chavira is involved in deceptive practices. We know that Kathleen Gannon is involved in deceptive practices. Um, and, Teresa, this is where Teresa Chavira gives you a little bit of shivers, because she's, supposed to be benevolent, helping victims. And we know that those helping victims, like Lorraine Mayella, is involved in deceptive practices, right? She's involved with deceptive practices. That Mayella family is involved in deceptive practices. And, and they have important roles. They have mental health care roles. They have uh, managing a federal courthouse roles. Um, they have uh, what is Blake Crucius? He's uh, does taxes and pay and all the finances and everything like that. That'll come to me. We're at almost 1 o'clock in the morning. So this, and he is involved in deceptive practices, and he's messing with people's uh, uh, personal paperwork that's sensitive, right? And so they're all involved in documents that are sensitive, accessing information that is sensitive, that's confidential, and they're involved in deceptive practices. Okay, those two things don't mix too good, right? Those two things are, make them very suspect for other activities, especially when we know, when we have it confirmed that they were absolutely targeting Richard, and we know what Richard was the witness for, and that was criminal trafficking. So, and we know that through the LA riots, what are they upset about? They're upset about illegal uh, illegal individuals in this country that are illegal, okay? Deceptive practices, right? And they are getting caught. And what are they getting caught for? Lots of crime. And part of that crime is impersonating individuals, using um, social security numbers that do not belong to them. And it goes on, deceptive practices. That's what they're being accused of. And a lot of them are being accused of some very violent crimes, very violent crimes. What is Raquel Primo up to with her deceptive practices? It's already there that she's been accused over and over again of deceptive practices. Well, you know what she does? She's a notary. She's a notary. Not only that, she is a wedding she officiates weddings. She officiates weddings. She does apostilles. Apostilles are dealing with paperwork. Notary is dealing with paperwork. Of course, weddings are all about dealing with paperwork, having the registration, the license for a marriage, and we know that she's officiating. Even it seems like it, the evidence shows it, that she's even doing in Mexico, these weddings. And, these are regulated activities. And, so, uh, if she's doing things in Mexico, and she's doing, officiating weddings, and she's doing notary, and she's doing apostilles, something, and she's involved in deceptive practices, and we have, you know, uh, criminal trafficking, like human trafficking, going on in El Paso, and we have like the Annunciation House that now has to hand over all of its information to the Attorney General. And we know that there is human trafficking because we have hundreds of thousands of children that are now, mostly not alive anymore. They're mostly not alive anymore. We don't even know. We don't even know because of all the deceptive practices of hundreds of thousands of children being trafficked through Fort Bliss, 10,000 at a time, 10,000 at a time. And we know that with Richard's vehicle, there were deceptive practices. I'm just telling you that has been confirmed. Richard's vehicle, there's been deceptive practices 100%. It's been confirmed. And that was absolutely connected to Raquel Primo, who is absolutely very, very, very close with Bob Moore and Kathleen Gannon, and very, very close, shares children with so I guess her grandchildren are are you know call Manuel Chavira grandpa. Hey grandpa, or what would you call him? Poppy or Froppy? Froppy for fraudster. I don't know. I don't know what they call him. But I know that there is deceptive practices, and this is all confirmed. This is not me thinking, oh, maybe this is that, maybe. No, this is absolutely confirmed through all the paperwork. And I don't know what Raquel Primo is doing when it comes to illegal immigration. I don't know. I don't know. But, red flags go up when I see her being a notary, when I see her involved in deceptive practices right there at A&R Chavira Auto LLC. Red flags go up when I see that she officiates wedding. I don't think that you can be a notary. Please tell me. And I don't know if that is allowed in Mexico. I just don't think. I think you have to be a judge. I think you have to be a minister, right? And that's all regulated. So, and I know that a lot of people get married because of immigration. They want their green card and all of that, and then you have apostilles for birth certificates, and you have it for, property and all of these things. So, I just don't think that it is, or even divorces, you need apostilles. Um, so something is, when you mix officiating weddings, which is not me saying it, it's her. She's saying it. She's putting up all the pictures for it. So you've got all these pictures of people getting married. Um, you have you have her being a notary, you have her being an apostille. Um, yeah, something is, and then connected to the media there, right? Connected on the Mexican side and on the Texas side, on the US side, and also connected to the cartel. So, gosh, that whoa, whoa, she's important. She is a very important person to look into, right? She's very important to be connected to Nidal Baem, to be connected to the media, to be connected to Bob Moore, to be connected to cartel, to be connected to legal work, to be connected to deceptive practices. Um, you know, look, uh, you know, and to be connected to those that it has been confirmed targeted our son so bad that he winded up losing his life, and them it just tells you how they framed the media. They kept information from us, which is illegal. They can't keep information from us that he was a whistleblower, that he was a witness in the cases, absolutely in cases that were being investigated by the Trump administration. And a witness had been silenced. A witness cannot now testify because a witness has been silenced. This is absolutely needs to be reported. This was kept from us. And when I say us, of course, our family, but I'm talking about El Pasoans too. And I'm talking about also in Juarez, Mexico, because El Paso and Juarez are one big, really big city, right? Of course, it's two countries, one big city. People go back and forth all the time. Look, they were El Paso ISD or other ISDs there in El Paso. El Paso, let's just say El Paso, the schools, they were sending buses over to Juarez to collect children, to bring them back over to the United States to attend school in the United States on the American dime, on the American taxpayers' dime, you know, and in order to create these big contracts to build school after school after school. And of course, we build beautiful schools. We spend a lot of money on those schools and we make taxpayers pay it. And that's why you have um, these high property taxes there. But then if you have connections with the VA and you can get, disability benefits and you don't have to pay so much property tax. I don't think, well, we know we've confirmed it that Leilani Hart wasn't paying any property tax at all, So she gets this little privilege because of her connections and, whatever, I don't know what kind of problems she had being a dentist cleaning teeth. I don't know. I don't know what, being a dental assistant. I don't know. But, no, I just know that she didn't pay any taxes, right, for her property. So this is, whereas other people have to pay enormous taxes there for schools that were not really necessary, even though they're beautiful, right? They're very beautiful, huge contracts. I mean, huge contracts. And I'm sure they weren't under budget. I'm sure they weren't under budget. I'm sure the budget was huge for building these schools. And so so not only do you have the contract problem, but you have this huge criminal trafficking problem. And you have anybody that's a whistleblower and a witness being targeted by this group that has now um, with fraud because, the judges in the magistrate court are absolutely impersonating. They're not even judges. They're not even there rightfully. They're not legitimate. You have a DA, second DA in a row, James 2020 stamp Montoya. You have before that Bill Usurper Hicks. Um, calling this, I need your help. I need your help to the Secretary of State, which brings in Governor Abbott, and he's just, yeah, whew, um, it's just very, very clear. The evidence shows that, we have this imposter, chief of police, um, and we don't have the structures there, the legitimate structures there for oversight. We have Veronica Escobar, who is absolutely a mirror, mirror on the wall. I only had $100,000. Now I have millions. This is Veronica Escobar and denying any kind of congressional for Richard's case is just criminal, absolutely criminal. And she's the one that brought in the fraudulent, unqualified, illegal chief medical examiner for last time I checked, $430,000 a year paycheck he gets, Mario Raskin Ortiz from the El Pasoans. And then of course, you have the AUSA, right? Uh, what's his name? Steven Spitzer, that, is good friends with the Mayellas. So you don't, and then of course you have Jaime Esparza, who is just so conflicted. He's so conflicted. So, the oversight, um, there's too many fraudsters and, so I think that is all being addressed right now. We had good news today about the child, those that do harm to children, huge arrest through Texas, and we have more news coming. We were notified today, more news coming, and so it's becoming very, very clear. And I have to get on here every day and explain it to everyone that there is uh, grand theft larceny of taxpayers' money because you're not getting your services. This is deprivation of honest services, right? You have the right to have a legitimate DA, to have legitimate judges, to have a legitimate chief of police, not someone that's connected to to the Mexican cartel, which have a really bad designation right now, right? You don't want to be connected to them, and this fraud, this deceptive practices within the notary, and this is, we've already complained about other notaries. Um, there is a real problem with the notaries, and what they're doing and their actions that they're taking. And if we can't have legitimate, dependable, and honest services from our agencies, our institutions, and our notary and our apostilles, if all of that paperwork is surrounded by deceptive practices, and then our media is not even any kind of oversight, they're part of it. um, Look, Bob Moore was part of targeting Richard. He was part of it because he's part of A&R Chavira LLC. He's part of it. Okay, he's very connected. He's part of that. They absolutely knew that Richard was a whistleblower, that he was a risk to them, and they targeted him. And it went on and on until he lost his life. Until he lost his life. And then the cover up and the targeting of our family and of whistleblower Judge Roger Rodriguez continued after that, right? Continued after that. So this is absolutely confirmed. This is not a a investigative theory, okay? It's not an investigative theory. This is confirmed. They are involved in this. Their group is involved in this. Now you understand why, from the very beginning, we were being targeted, because they were already targeting Richard months before, starting at the end of 2019. They already had identified him as a risk to their billion-dollar uh, uh, criminal enterprise, right? Their criminal grand theft larceny, be it with contracts, be it with the criminal trafficking, be it with their media conglomerate, because they're writing these stories, and these stories are used in cases, right? And they are absolutely used to move the direction of the thinking of the people. They mold and meld, and they control algorithms. Like if you go to Google, what is going to come up, and they even pay to control the algorithms, what you will learn, what you will think. And so they're very, very important to this criminal network, to control any kind of scrutiny, to control any kind of judicial cases, right? They want to control that, and they control it by controlling narratives, and they control it by controlling the mind of the people. Because if the people don't care, if the people think, oh yeah, this is how it is, then we don't need any accountability. Then there won't be a demand for accountability. And our government is by the people, for the people, of the people. And that's why the media is so powerful in our country, because the people, believe it or not, have so much power. And that's why they wanted to bring the people across the border, even if it was illegally. And then because they've been targeting us anyway, of the people and by the people and for the people. They've been targeting us anyway to sway us. And so, of course, to have uh, people in this country fearing for their own lives and livelihoods, not so much living. But, when you're fearing for your life, meaning, oh, I'm illegal, I'm using false social security numbers, I'm using a false name, I'm not paying my taxes like I should, I'm taking these, I'm under the thumb of people that know my problem. And that was very clear in Leilani Hart's affidavit. She said that she could not report on the worst type of crimes against children because her immigration status would be revealed. That's what they held over her head, her immigration status. So she says. I don't believe her, but so she says. And so this is, and I shouldn't have probably even said that because that's just my opinion. She said it in her affidavit that that's why she didn't report the worst type of crimes against children in her house and the illegal purchasing of weapons and the possession of the worst type of crimes against children on film, um, because her family held, or her husband held over her head her immigration status, which, this is why it's so bad. And it's really the most loving thing to say to a person that's illegally in this country, to say, go out and apply legally. Go out and apply legally. And I understand being poor. I understand, believe it or not, I do. I understand. My Oma, she was raised in a house that had dirt floors. Okay. I was in high school. My Oma still didn't have hot running water in her apartment. Now she had a beautiful apartment. Okay. It didn't have hot running water. She couldn't afford the hot running water. She wanted to afford other things. Um, but she learned. That's why she learned how to leave the seedling. Remember, I told you that story. She, even as a widow, she never went back to the seedling, to the projects. And she made her life. She worked very, very hard. Um, you need to do things legally, and you will make it. Well, it's up to God, right? It's up to God. But to be in the hands of these people that want to give you fake social security numbers, that want to hold that over your head so that you can do cheap labor. They don't want to pay you a decent wage or give you decent, and so then you have to depend on other these bribes of free healthcare and free this and free that and whatever. And then you become a political pawn, right? A political pawn in voting and all of that. I mean, it's just so obvious how they're doing everything and how they're manipulating people and their lives and everything like that. Um, and of course, um, it really, it really is so many red flags that we have questions for, um, because there's so many deceptive practices, and we can't just be overwhelmed by them. We have to face them. We have to, inch by inch, address each and every one of them. And and then it all kind of comes together, and it becomes a group. And I think that, uh, it's getting very, um, well, let's see what the FBI does. But Raquel Primo, with her marriage officiating and her notary and her apostilles, and not being able to be trusted, okay, because she was doing deceptive practices with her ANR, Chavira auto. And how I can tell you right now, because of the paperwork, it is absolutely confirmed that they were doing deceptive practices. Okay, that's been confirmed. So that means she can't be really entrusted with being a notary and doing apostilles and uh, handling very confidential information and paperwork. She can't be trusted. She's got to find a different job. And I hope that those marriages are not void, because something is really wrong with this officiating marriages. And to do it across the border and at the border, weird stuff, weird stuff. Something is really fishy. And for her to be, you know, under the wing of Kathleen Gannon, under the wing of Kathleen Gannon and Bob Moore, wow. Um, you make up your mind. And I did, many years ago, when I was homeschooling, I did a whole section on George Washington. I learned so much about George Washington. Well, I was going to tutor parents how to homeschool. That was, my plans. Um, and so, of course, I've kept all these records, and of course, people know that it was called McGuffey's because I love McGuffey's readers so much. I love it because they're eclectic, meaning that they give you a little, you know, a little a little bit of knowledge that teases you, and then you go, gosh, that's so interesting. I have to look into that. I have to look into that. That's what McGuffey's readers are. They give you so much information, but but the information is just little teasers of so much information, just to let you know that that's there, that topic is there. And then you have to go and you have to do your own research, right? And of course, the character of George Washington, the character of Columbus, those were two really fun units that we did, that we looked into. And people don't know about George Washington. I didn't know about George Washington until I did this. And I think this is very, very important because we think that President Trump is the only president that has ever seen this kind of attack, these media attacks, these case attacks, um, all the things he has to go up against. But I will tell you this right now, George Washington did too. George Washington had so much mutiny on his hands. He had a ragtag military. We have a beautiful military. They're mutant. They are involved in mutiny too, right? And President Trump has had to rebuild them too. But George Washington had to build it. In 5 years, he had to build a navy to go up against the British Navy, the premier navy, and he had 5 years to do it. So to know, and he had the problem of slavery, right? He had this problem of slavery, and uh, he was just amazing. If they would have listened to him, that he would have ended slavery very, very quickly. But because they didn't listen to him, because he picked Washington D.C. to end slavery. He wanted it to be a manufacturing city. He wanted the United States, America, to be manufacturing. He said that would end slavery, and that's why he picked it for the coal that was up in Western Virginia, for the Potomac River, the ships, the harbors, the central to that it would connect the North and the South together, and that it would absolutely end slavery. Because you wouldn't need it. No one would want it. It costs a lot of money for people to have slaves, and they wouldn't need it, and they would end it. And he wanted to end it. And it's just amazing to see all the attacks from England, the loyalists. They were called the loyalists to the crown, and he went up against the crown. President Trump went up against the globalists, right? The globalists, the swamp, the swamp. And so when you compare the two, it's just really amazing. And I learned this years ago. So I did put together this little comparison and put it up today because I think people need to uh, understand that this is um, there's nothing new under the sun. It's the same problems bringing people into the country to, you know, cheap labor, right? Cheap labor. Um, and um, and what will solve the problem? And that is manufacturing. And manufacturing is the answer to um, a country that can defend itself also. So it's just, I hope you read it. And, and a lot of good things are happening behind the scenes. So I hope that you share everything, share Richard's case, and we'll see. It's all depends on the people. This is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and they will listen to you. They will listen to you if you demand accountability. That you don't want a soldier that's a whistleblower that is being targeted, and that his case is being targeted, and that the whistleblower that is exposing the cover up in Richard's case being targeted also. If you're, uh, can't tolerate that, if you want accountability, then you share. Then you share, and thank you so much because it will make our country stronger. It will absolutely make our country a much better place for our children and for our future. Thank you so much, and more livable, right? Because they're so involved in this grand theft larceny, and that makes our lives very expensive. We have a lot of things that can be much cheaper, and so yeah, that would if we can get rid of the crime, uh, life would be much cheaper for us, and we could live much grander, much grander. Thank you so much. God bless you, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing.